The crowd roared like thunder across the massive arena. Thousands of alien beings from dozens of worlds packed the crystal seats, their eyes fixed on the fighting ring below. Some had traveled for months just to see him fight. They came to watch death. They came to watch Zak Thul the Destroyer. The champion stood 10 feet tall in the center of the arena. His body looked like it was made of black stone and sharp metal. 4 powerful arms hung from his massive shoulders, each one thick as a tree trunk. His skin was covered in hard plates that looked like armor but grew from his own body. Scars covered every inch of him, white lines that told the story of 1,000 battles. Zak Thul belonged to a race called the Vorthak. They were born fighters, created by evolution to be perfect killers. Their bones were harder than steel. Their muscles could crush rocks. Their reflexes were faster than lightning, and Zak Thul was the best of them all. For 7 years, he had ruled the galactic combat arena. 7 years without a single loss. He had fought warriors from every corner of the galaxy, giant insect creatures with razor claws, energy beings that could burn through metal, shapeshifters that could become any form they wanted. All of them had fallen before him. The arena announcer's voice boomed across the stadium. He spoke in the universal trade language that all species could understand. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all forms, today we witness another glorious battle. In the red corner, standing undefeated for 7 years, the terror of the stars, the unbreakable champion, Zak Thul the Destroyer. The crowd exploded with noise. Some cheered because they loved him. Others screamed because they feared him. But all of them made noise because they respected his power. Zak Thul raised his 4 arms to the crowd. His face showed no emotion. He had learned long ago that showing feelings was weakness. In the arena, weakness meant death. He had never been weak, and he never would be. And in the blue corner, the announcer continued, representing the newly admitted Terran Confederation, we have their chosen champion, Maya Chen. The crowd's noise changed. Instead of cheers or screams, there was laughter, confused, mocking laughter that echoed through the arena like a bad joke. Maya Chen walked into the fighting ring. She was tiny compared to Zak Thul. She stood maybe 5 feet tall and looked like she weighed less than one of his arms. Her skin was pale pink, soft-looking. Her hair was black and tied back in a simple knot. She wore basic fighting clothes that looked like they were made on some backward planet. The crowd laughed harder. Even the arena officials looked embarrassed. This was supposed to be entertainment, but this looked more like murder. Zak Thul studied his opponent with cold eyes. Humans were new to the galactic community. Their planet, Earth, had only made contact with other worlds a few years ago. They were weak creatures who lived on a small world far from the center of civilization. Their bodies were soft. They had no natural weapons like claws or fangs. They couldn't even survive in space without machines to help them. The Galactic Combat. League had accepted their request to join only as a joke. The ruling council thought it would be funny to watch these soft pink creatures get crushed. It would remind everyone else what happened when you tried to punch above your weight in the galaxy. Maya looked around the arena without fear. She seemed calm, almost peaceful. Her eyes moved over the crowd, then settled on Zak Thul. When their gazes met, she nodded once like she was greeting a neighbor. The gesture surprised him. Most opponents either tried to look fierce to hide their fear, or they trembled openly. This human girl did neither. She looked at him like he was just another person she had to meet. The announcer continued his speech. By ancient law, all species may send champions to prove their worth in combat. The humans have chosen to exercise this right. Let all beings witness how the weak fare against the strong. More laughter from the crowd. But Zak Thul noticed something strange. Maya didn't seem bothered by the mockery. If anything, she looked like she was studying the arena itself. learning how the space worked. The fighting ring was a perfect circle, 50 feet across, surrounded by an energy barrier that kept the fighters inside and the crowd safe. The floor was made of a special metal that could handle any kind of damage. Weapons hung on racks around the outside, though most fighters preferred to use their natural abilities. Maya walked to one of the weapon racks. The crowd quieted, curious to see what this tiny human would choose. Giant war hammers that could smash through walls, energy swords that could cut through anything, plasma cannons that could melt steel. She picked up 2 simple metal sticks, each about 2 feet long. Training batons, the kind used to practice basic moves. The crowd exploded with laughter again. Zack-Thul felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Confusion. Every fighter he had faced had tried to find weapons that would give them an advantage. They chose the biggest guns, the sharpest swords, the most powerful tools they could find. This human had chosen training weapons that couldn't seriously hurt anyone. Was she insane? Was this some kind of joke he didn't understand? The announcer looked confused too, but he continued with his job. The champions have chosen their weapons. Let the combat begin in 30 seconds. Remember, this is a fight to submission, unconsciousness, or death. There are no other rules. Maya took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, something had changed. She still looked calm, but now there was something else there. Focus. Complete, total focus. She began to move in slow, smooth motions. It looked like she was dancing, but Zack-Thul recognized it as some kind of practice routine. Her movements were fluid, like water flowing downhill. Each motion connected to the next in a pattern he couldn't quite understand. The timer reached 0. A loud horn sounded through the arena. The fight had begun. Zack-Thul expected the human to charge at him or run away in fear. Instead, Maya simply stood in place and continued her slow movements. She was studying him, he realized. Watching. How he moved, how he breathed, how he held his body. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Fights were supposed to be about power meeting power, strength against strength. This felt like something else entirely. The crowd grew restless. They had come to see violence, not dancing. Shouts began to rise from the seats. Fight already! Crush the weak human! Stop wasting time! But Maya didn't seem to hear them. She kept moving in her strange patterns, her eyes never leaving Zack-Thul. And slowly, something began to happen. The champion, who had never felt uncertain in any fight, began to feel like he was the one being hunted. The girl who looked so weak, so helpless, was doing something that none of his previous opponents had ever done. She was learning him, reading him like a book. And for the first time in 7 years, Zack-Thul the Destroyer felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt like prey. Zack-Thul decided to end this strange dance. He had wasted enough time trying to understand what the human was doing. It was time to show the galaxy why he was champion. He charged forward with all 4 arms ready to strike. His massive body moved, like a machine built for war. Each step shook the arena floor. His first punch could have torn through steel plating. Maya moved sideways at the last second. The punch missed her by inches and hit nothing but air. Zack-Thul spun around, confused. She should have been crushed. Instead, she was standing 5 feet away, still holding those ridiculous training sticks. The crowd murmured in surprise. No, one avoided Zack-Thul's first attack. Ever. He attacked again, this time using 2 arms to punch, while the other 2 tried to grab her. Maya flowed between his attacks like smoke. She didn't try to block his powerful strikes. Instead, she moved, just enough to let them pass by her. It looked impossible. Zack-Thul was fast, much faster than any human should be able to react to. But somehow, Maya was always 1 step ahead of him. She moved like she knew what he was going to do before he did it. The champion felt anger rising in his chest. This was making him look foolish in front of the entire galaxy. He increased his speed, throwing a combination of strikes that had defeated opponents in seconds. Maya danced between them all. Her movements were still smooth and flowing, like she was still doing her practice routine, but now she was adding something new. As his fists flew past her, she would tap them lightly with her training sticks, just gentle touches that did no damage. The touches confused him. They weren't attacks. They were more like measurements, like she was testing something. Minutes passed. Zak Thul had thrown hundreds of punches and landed exactly 0. The crowd had gone from laughing to murmuring to complete silence. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Maya continued her strange pattern of movement. She flowed around him like water around a rock. Every time he thought he had her trapped, she would slip away through a gap he didn't even know existed. Then something happened that shocked everyone in the arena. Maya went on the attack. She didn't charge like a warrior. She didn't roar like a beast. She simply stepped forward and tapped Zak Thul on the knee with one of her sticks. The tap was so light it shouldn't have done anything, but Zak Thul's leg suddenly felt strange, weak, like something important had been turned off. Maya tapped his other knee. Then she touched a spot on his lower back. Each tap was gentle, almost friendly, but each one made part of his body feel different, wrong. The champion tried to grab her, but his arms felt heavy now, slow. Maya had touched specific points on his body, and somehow those touches were affecting his strength. She moved behind him and tapped 2 spots on his neck. Suddenly, Zak Thul couldn't turn his head properly. His vision started to blur on one side. The crowd was dead silent now. They were watching something none of them understood. The galaxy's most feared warrior was being taken apart piece by tiny, gentle touches. Maya stepped back and waited. Zak Thul tried to attack again, but his body wouldn't obey him properly. His punches were slow and clumsy. His legs felt like they were made of jelly. "What did you do to me?" he growled in his deep voice. Maya didn't answer. She couldn't speak his language very well yet, but her eyes showed something that made his blood run cold. Understanding. Complete, perfect understanding of exactly how his body worked. She had spent those first minutes studying him, learning not just how he moved, but how his muscles connected, where his nerves ran, how his alien anatomy was put together. And now she was using that knowledge to shut him down. Zak Thul realized he was in serious trouble. This wasn't a fight anymore. This was surgery being performed with training sticks. He tried one last desperate attack, throwing all 4 arms forward in a move that had never failed him. Maya didn't dodge this time. Instead, she stepped forward into his attack. She moved between his arms like she was dancing with them. Her sticks touched him 12 times in 2 seconds. Light, precise touches on his wrists, elbows, and shoulders. All 4 of Zak Thul's arms suddenly stopped working. They hung at his sides like dead weight. He couldn't lift them. He couldn't even feel them. The crowd gasped. The champion was helpless. Maya could have ended the fight then. She could have struck him anywhere she wanted while he was unable to defend himself. Instead, she stepped back and shook her head. She pointed to the timer on the arena wall. There were still 10 minutes left in the match. Then she made a gesture that was universal among fighting species. She was offering him time to recover. Tatu. Gesture stunned everyone in the arena. In 7 years, no one had ever shown mercy to Zak Thul. He had never needed mercy, and he had never given it. But this small human had disabled him completely and then offered him a chance to continue. Slowly, feeling began to return to his arms. Whatever Maya had done to his nerves, it wasn't permanent. She had hurt him in a way that would heal quickly. She had shown him that she could win, but she had chosen not to. Why? Zak Thul flexed his arms as strength returned to them. He studied Maya with new eyes. She wasn't trying to prove she was stronger than him. She was trying to prove something else entirely. The crowd began to stir. They didn't understand what they were seeing either. This wasn't how fights were supposed to work. There was supposed to be a winner and a loser. Instead, there was this strange dance of power and restraint. When Zakthul felt ready, he nodded to Maya. She nodded back and took her fighting stance again. They began to circle each other. This time, Zakthul was more careful. He had learned to respect those innocent-looking training sticks. He had learned to respect the girl who carried them. The fight continued, but it was different now. Zakthul attacked with more thought and less rage. Maya defended with the same flowing movements, but now she struck back more often, not to disable him completely, but to show him new things about fighting. She showed him how to use an opponent's strength against them, how to find weak points he had never noticed, how to move in ways that wasted no energy. The crowd watched in amazement as their brutal champion learned new techniques in the middle of a fight. Maya wasn't just defeating him, she was teaching him. When the timer finally ran out, both fighters were still standing. Maya's clothes were torn and dirty. Zakthul was covered in small bruises where her sticks had touched him. But neither had been seriously hurt. The announcer didn't know what to say. There had never been a draw in the championship arena before. Maya bowed to Zakthul in the manner of her people. Then she walked to the edge of the ring and sat down, breathing hard but smiling slightly. Zakthul stood in the center of the arena, staring at her. For the first time in 7 years, he had not won a fight. But somehow, he didn't feel like he had lost either. He felt like he had learned something important. He just didn't know what it was yet. The draw had shaken the entire galaxy. News of the fight spread across every world, every space station, every trading post. The undefeated champion had been held to a tie by a human nobody had ever heard of. Zakthul couldn't sleep. For 3 days after the fight, he paced his private chambers trying to understand what had happened. He watched recordings of the match over and over, studying every moment. The more he watched, the more confused he became. Maya hadn't fought like any warrior he knew. She had fought like something else, something he couldn't name. He decided to learn about humans. If he was going to face Maya again, he needed to understand what she was. The Galactic database had very little information about Earth and its people. Humans were new to space travel. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Before that, they had been trapped on their single world, isolated and unknown. What information existed painted them as weaklings. They had no natural armor like the Vorthak. They couldn't breathe poison like the Zalani. They couldn't survive in space without protection like the Kresh. They seemed to be good at nothing except making tools. But there was something else in the files. Something that made Zakthul's blood run cold. Human military history. He read about their wars, thousands of them. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. But it wasn't the fighting that disturbed him. It was how they fought. Other species fought until they won or lost. Humans fought until they learned. He read about battles where human armies had been destroyed, then came back months later with new tactics that turned defeat into victory. He read about weapons that had made humans helpless until they figured out how to use those same weapons better than their creators. Humans didn't just adapt to new threats. They evolved during the fighting itself. Zakthul realized what Maya had been doing during their match. She hadn't been trying to defeat him. She had been studying him, learning everything about how he fought so she could fight better. And now she had 3 weeks to prepare for their rematch. The rematch was the most anticipated event in galactic history. Beings from 100 worlds bought tickets. Others paid fortunes just to watch it on broadcasts. The arena had to build additional seating to hold everyone who wanted to see it. Maya arrived early and spent hours walking around the fighting ring. She examined every inch of the floor, the walls, the weapon racks. She was still learning, still studying. When Zakthul entered the arena, the crowd erupted. But the cheers were different now. Before, they had cheered for his power. Now they cheered because they were excited to see something new. Maya had changed too. She looked stronger than before. Her movements were more confident, and her eyes held something that hadn't been there in the first fight: certainty. The announcer began his speech, but nobody was listening. All eyes were on the two fighters as they prepared for battle. Maya chose the same simple training sticks she had used before. But now Zak Thul noticed details he had missed. The sticks were worn smooth from years of practice. They were perfectly balanced, and Maya held them like they were part of her body. Zak Thul had chosen no weapons. He would fight with his natural strength and speed. But he had spent 3 weeks developing new techniques, new combinations, new ways to attack that Maya couldn't predict. The horn sounded. This time, both fighters moved at once. Zak Thul had learned from their first match. Instead of charging straight forward, he circled around Maya, using his longer reach to attack from unexpected angles. His movements were smoother now, less predictable. But Maya had learned too. She didn't just react to his attacks anymore. She anticipated them. When he threw a punch with his upper right arm, she was already moving to counter the follow-up strike from his lower left. The fight was faster and more violent than their first encounter. Maya struck back more often, her sticks finding gaps in Zak Thul's defense that shouldn't have existed. Each hit was precise and purposeful. Zak Thul began to realize something terrible. Maya wasn't just better than before. She was learning during the fight itself. Every exchange taught her something new about his abilities. He tried changing his strategy mid-fight, switching from power attacks to speed combinations. Maya adapted within seconds. He tried using his forearms in patterns no Vorthak had ever used before. Maya read them like she had seen them 1,000 times. Everything he threw at her, she absorbed and used against him. It was like fighting his own reflection, except the reflection got stronger every minute. The crowd watched in amazement as the champion began to slow down. Not from injury, but from exhaustion. He was using every technique he knew, every trick he had learned in 7 years of fighting. Maya was learning them all and finding ways to counter them. She began to hurt him, not with the gentle taps from their first fight, but with real strikes that did real damage. Her training sticks found nerve clusters, joint connections, muscle groups that could disable his attacks. Zak Thul realized he was losing, actually losing. For the first time in his life, he was facing defeat. But something strange happened then. Instead of panic or rage, he felt excitement. This was what he had been missing. For 7 years, he had been the best fighter in the galaxy, which meant he had stopped learning. Every opponent had been weaker than him. Every victory had been inevitable. Maya was showing him something he had forgotten: the joy of facing a challenge that might actually defeat him. He began to fight differently. Instead of trying to overpower her, he started trying to learn from her. When she used a technique he had never seen, he tried to copy it. When she found a weakness in his defense, he tried to fix it. The fight became something neither of them had expected. It became a conversation, a violent, dangerous conversation where each exchange was a question and an answer. Maya's movements taught Zak Thul new ways to use his strength. His power showed Maya new limits to overcome. They fought for the full 30 minutes. When the final horn sounded, both fighters were exhausted, battered, and covered in bruises. But Maya was still standing, and Zak Thul was on one knee. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, they began to cheer. Not just for Maya's victory, but for both fighters. They had witnessed something special. Maya walked over to Zak Thul and offered him her hand. He looked at it for a moment, then took it and let her help him to his feet. "Good fight," Maya said in broken galactic standard. Zak Thul looked down at this small human who had just defeated him. For the first time since he was a child, he smiled. "Good teacher," he replied. The crowd went wild. The galaxy's most feared warrior had just acknowledged that a human had something to teach him. and for the first time in 7 years, Zack Thule the Destroyer was looking forward to his next lesson. After the defeat, Zack Thule disappeared. He left the arena without speaking to anyone, and took the first transport to his homeworld. The galaxy buzzed with rumors about what had happened to their former champion. Some said he had gone into hiding, from shame. Others claimed he was training in secret to get revenge. A few believed he had suffered a mental breakdown and would never fight again. None of them were right. Zack Thule had returned to the ancient training grounds where he had first learned to fight as a child. The place was unchanged after all these years. Stone platforms carved into a mountainside, worn smooth by generations of Vorthak warriors practicing their deadly arts. He spent his days alone, going through the basic movements he had learned decades ago. Punch, block, kick, grab. Simple techniques he had mastered so long ago that he barely thought about them anymore. But now he was thinking about them. Really thinking. Maya had shown him that even the simplest movements could be improved, refined, made more efficient. He practiced for weeks, breaking down every technique into its smallest parts. He discovered flaws in his form that had been there for years, wasted motions that cost him speed, muscle tensions that reduced his power. For the first time since he was young, he was learning again. Maya found him there on a warm afternoon and climbed the mountain path alone, carrying a small pack with food and water. She moved quietly, but Zack Thule heard her coming long before she reached the training ground. He turned to face her, not sure what to expect. Was she here to gloat about her victory? To challenge him again? To finish what she had started? Maya set down her pack and pulled out 2 bottles of water. She offered one to him. "You look thirsty," she said in his language. Her accent was terrible, but he could understand her. Zack Thule accepted the water and drank deeply. They sat together on the edge of the stone platform, looking out over the valley below. "Why did you come here?" he asked. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I wanted to understand." "Understand what?" "You. Why you fight. What made you so strong?" Zack Thule laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not strong anymore. You proved that." Maya shook her head. "You don't understand. You are the strongest fighter I have ever seen. Your power, your speed, your technique, all perfect. But you defeated me. I didn't defeat your strength. I just found a different way to win." She stood up and walked to the center of the platform. "Show me," she said. "Show you what?" "How you learned to fight. What made you champion?" Zack Thule stared at her. No one had ever asked him to teach them his techniques. Other warriors tried to steal his secrets by watching his fights, but no one had simply asked. He stood and moved to the center of the platform. "This is where I learned the first movement," he said, taking a basic fighting stance. The foundation of all Vorthak combat. He demonstrated the stance, explaining how each part of his body was positioned and why. Maya watched carefully, occasionally asking questions. "Why do you keep your upper arms higher than your lower arms?" "For better leverage when striking downward." "And your feet? Why so wide apart?" "Stability, hard to knock down." Maya nodded and tried to copy the stance. Her small human body couldn't match his proportions exactly, but she adapted the position to work with her size. "Now the first strike," Zack Thule said. He threw a slow punch, breaking down the movement step by step. Maya copied it, but something was different about her version. She was finding ways to make the technique work better for a human body, adjustments that actually improved the strike's efficiency. They spent hours going through basic Vorthak combat forms, but it wasn't just Zack Thule teaching Maya. She was teaching him too. Every question she asked made him think about why he did things a certain way. Every adaptation she made showed him new possibilities. "Your turn," Maya said eventually. "Show me a human fighting technique." She demonstrated some of the movements she had used in their fights, flowing, circular motions that looked like dancing. but contained deadly precision. Zakthul tried to copy them, but his large, rigid body couldn't move the way hers did. So Maya showed him how to adapt the techniques for his size and strength. "Don't try to move like water," she explained. "You're like a mountain. Move like a mountain that has learned to dance." They worked together as the sun moved across the sky. Two warriors from different worlds, sharing knowledge that had taken lifetimes to acquire. As evening approached, Maya prepared to leave. But before she went, she said something that surprised him. "I have a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "Come, back to the arena. Fight with me, not against me." Zakthul didn't understand. "Fight with you?" "The arena has rules that allow team combat. Two fighters working together against multiple opponents. We could show the galaxy something new." She paused, searching for the right words in his language. "I didn't defeat you to prove humans were better than Vorthak. I fought you to show that different doesn't mean weaker, that learning from each other makes us all stronger." Zakthul considered her words. For 7 years, he had been the lone champion, fighting alone, trusting no one. The idea of fighting alongside someone else felt strange, but also exciting. "What would we fight against?" Maya smiled. "Whatever challenges they give us. The idea is to show that cooperation is stronger than domination." Over the following days, they continued training together. Maya learned Vorthak power techniques that let her hit harder than any human should be able to. Zakthul learned human flow techniques that made his massive body move with surprising grace. But more than that, they learned to fight as a team. Maya's speed and adaptability covered Zakthul's few weak points. His power and endurance protected her from attacks she couldn't avoid. When they finally announced their return to the arena, the galaxy went wild with excitement. The former champion and the human who had defeated him, now fighting side by side. Their first exhibition match was against 4 of the arena's top contenders, warriors who had each been hoping for a chance to face Zakthul individually. The fight lasted 12 minutes. Maya and Zakthul moved like they had been fighting together for years. She would disable an opponent's defenses, and he would finish them with precise, powerful strikes. He would draw multiple attackers toward him, and she would strike from behind with pinpoint accuracy. They weren't just winning. They were demonstrating something that had never been seen in the arena before. True partnership in combat. The crowd loved it. But more importantly, other fighters began to take notice. Warriors from different species started asking if they could train together. The idea of learning from former enemies began to spread. Maya had started something bigger than just changing the arena. She was changing how the galaxy thought about strength itself, and at the center of it all, a former destroyer who had learned that sometimes the greatest victory was helping someone else become stronger. 2 years had passed since Maya Chen first stepped into the arena. The galaxy was a different place now, and she was at the center of that change. The fighting arena still drew crowds from across known space, but the events had transformed completely. Instead of single warriors trying to destroy each other, beings from dozens of species came to learn from one another. Combat had become collaboration. Maya stood at the window of her training facility, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Insectoid Kreks were sparring with plant-like Verdani, sharing techniques that their species had developed over millions of years. A group of energy-based lumens were teaching physical beings how to move without wasting motion. And everywhere, humans were both teaching and learning. The facility had been built in orbit around the arena world, large enough to house warriors from hundreds of species. Maya had designed it herself, creating spaces where beings with different environmental needs could train together safely. The morning session went well, Zakthul said as he joined her at the window. His English had improved dramatically over the past 2 years, though he still spoke with the deep, careful tone of his people. Maya nodded. The Zilani are finally understanding how to adapt their poison resistance techniques for species that don't naturally produce toxins. And the Kresh have figured out how to teach space survival skills to beings who need atmosphere. They watched as a group of young fighters practiced together in the central courtyard. Different species, different worlds, different evolutionary paths, but all learning the same fundamental truth that Maya had discovered long ago. Strength came not from domination, but from understanding. "The Council wants to meet with us again," Zakthul said. Maya sighed. The Galactic Council had been trying to control or regulate what they were doing for months. Some members loved the new cooperative approach to combat. Others feared it would make the galaxy too peaceful, too soft. What do they want now? They're concerned about the military applications. Some worlds are worried that if everyone learns everyone else's fighting techniques, it will upset the balance of power. Maya turned away from the window. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. They had this conversation before. The old way of thinking said that each species should keep their abilities secret, use them as advantages over others. But Maya had proven that sharing knowledge made everyone stronger, not weaker. "There's something else," Zakthul said. "They want us to demonstrate our methods for the full council, show them that what we're doing isn't a threat to galactic security." Maya raised an eyebrow. "A demonstration?" "Combat trials. Against their chosen champions." She considered this. "The Council's champions would be the best fighters from the most powerful military species in the galaxy. They would come prepared to prove that the old ways of fighting were still superior. How many champions? 12. From 12 different worlds." Maya smiled. It was the same smile she had worn in her very first fight with Zakthul. The smile of someone who saw a challenge not as a threat, but as an opportunity to learn something new. "Just the two of us against 12 trained killers? Sounds fair." The demonstration was held in the original arena where Maya had first fought Zakthul. The council had insisted on the traditional setting, probably hoping that returning to the old arena would somehow bring back the old ways of fighting. They were wrong. Maya and Zakthul entered the arena together, moving with the fluid coordination they had developed over 2 years of constant training. They no longer looked like a human and a Vorthak fighting side by side. They looked like a single, unified force with 2 bodies. Their opponents were impressive. A crystalline shard walker whose body could become as hard as diamond. A phase-shifting wraith who could become partially invisible. A titan breed whose strength could crack planets. 9 others, each representing the pinnacle of their species' combat evolution. The betting pools gave Maya and Zakthul almost no chance of survival. The fight began with the 12 champions forming a circle around the 2 partners. The traditional strategy was to overwhelm opponents through coordinated attacks from all directions. Maya and Zakthul did something unexpected. Instead of trying to break out of the circle or defend against the attacks, they moved toward the center and began their own coordinated routine. It looked like a dance at first. Maya flowed around Zakthul in complex patterns, while he moved through powerful, precise forms. But as the champions attacked, the dance became something else. Every attack that came toward them was redirected, absorbed, or turned back against another attacker. Maya would guide a wraith strike toward a shardwalker. Zakthul would use a Titan breed's charge to knock down 3 other opponents. They weren't fighting 12 separate battles. They were conducting a symphony of motion where every enemy became part of their strategy. The crowd watched in amazement as the champions began to defeat each other. Not through Maya and Zakthul's direct attacks, but through their own redirected power being used against them. Within 20 minutes, all 12 champions were down, not seriously injured, but clearly beaten. Maya and Zakthul stood in the center of the arena, barely breathing hard. They had won without throwing a single aggressive strike. The council was silent. They had just witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about combat and power. Maya stepped forward and spoke to the council in clear, confident galactic standard. honorable representatives. What you have just seen is not a new way of fighting. It is a new way of thinking. For too long, the galaxy has believed that strength comes from keeping secrets, from maintaining advantages over others. But true strength comes from sharing knowledge, from learning from everyone around us. She gestured to Zakthul. 2 years ago, this warrior could have killed me in seconds. Instead, he chose to learn from me. That choice didn't make him weaker. It made both of us stronger. She looked around at the council members. The same is true for all of us. Every species in this galaxy has developed unique abilities over millions of years of evolution. Instead of hoarding those abilities, imagine what we could accomplish if we shared them. The council debated for hours. In the end, they voted to officially support Maya's training methods. The old arena was converted into a permanent academy where beings from across the galaxy could come to learn from each other. Maya became the first director of interspecies combat training, but she insisted that the position rotate among different species every few years. The goal was never to let one person or one species dominate the others. 5 years later, Maya stood in the same spot where she had first met Zakthul in combat. But now, instead of a fighting ring, there was a memorial garden. Not a memorial to the dead, but to the old ways of thinking that had died when she proved that cooperation was stronger than domination. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds came through the academy every year. They learned not just how to fight, but how to understand each other. Wars between species became rare, then almost non-existent. The galaxy had learned what Maya had always known. The strongest person in the room was not the one who could defeat everyone else. It was the one who could help everyone else become stronger. In the center of the memorial garden stood 2 statues. One showed a massive Vorthak warrior in a classic fighting pose, representing the old way of individual strength and domination. The other showed a small human woman with her hand extended in friendship, representing the new way of shared strength and cooperation. But the most important part of the memorial was not the statues themselves. It was the space between them, where the 2 figures seemed to be reaching toward each other. That space represented the future Maya had created, a future where differences were not barriers to overcome, but opportunities to learn and grow. The girl who had changed the stars had done so not by conquering them, but by teaching them to shine brighter together. And throughout the galaxy, in languages she had never heard and on worlds she had never seen, beings told stories of the small human who had proven that sometimes the greatest victory was helping your enemy become your friend. The stars themselves seemed to shine more brightly now, as if they too had learned something from the girl who changed everything by refusing to see anyone as truly her enemy.